Right, so we got a big fight coming up this Saturday, Bivol versus Beterbiev. The first thing I want to ask, because I'm in the corner just about of Beterbiev, but I think the only thing that will beat him is father time. So do you think his age is a factor in this fight, and do you also think the injury he came off would be a factor as well?
So I I think they both can play a factor into it. Like, so I tell everybody that they both have prototypical Russian styles. And what most people, when they think of the Eastern Bloc style and the Russian style, they think of, like Bivol, where he's, on his feet, the pendulum or whatever they want to call it, where he's going bouncing in and out. But if you really follow like the Soviet bloc or the Eastern Bloc and the Soviet Bloc when it comes to fighting, there's two really distinct styles, and Beterbiev has the one style, and Bivol has the other style. Bivol is the much, I guess you could say, he's the guy that's using his body the entire time when he's in the ring. He's on his feet, he's going back and forth, he's controlling the distance, and he's doing a really good job of that. And we can clearly see how he did that against Canelo, and how he's done that, in other fights, whatever, recently, and even when he started. And then when you look at Beterbiev, he is the he is the guy that is the aggressor. And if you follow, like, because I followed, you know amateur boxing intently, like in the 90s, and that's when video came out and we could watch fights, and there was always two distinct styles. You'd have the guys that would have the long guard and then be bouncing in and out. They'd be on their toes or the balls of their feet the entire fight. And then you'd have the other guys that would move. They would have great footwork, but they'd be more flat-footed, and they would move in and out, and they'd be extremely powerful guys. And a lot of those guys come from the, I would say, the Asian southern portion of the Soviet Union that is right now Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, and a perfect example of that is, look at uh,
Golovkin.
Triple G. There you go. Triple G is a perfect example of that. He's not a he's on his feet. He's flat-footed the entire time. Rarely do you see him bounce up, whatever. He may do it once in a while, but he's that prototypical example of aggressive, calculated. He can close the distance very quickly by taking 2 to 3 steps. And I remember in amateur boxing, those guys could move so fast with their punches, and it was like a drill that they would do, where they would step with the left foot, punch with the right hand, and they would go boop 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 boop, and they close the distance on you in a split second. And there's a couple videos of Beterbiev doing that in training camp, where he slips and then he like throws 3 punches, and he's already on the other side of the ring. He's walked you down into the other side of the ring. And
That's
so, like, people don't think about that. They're like, oh, that's just an no, 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 that because not everybody can be an aggressive fighter. Not everybody is built like Beterbiev or Golovkin. Like, you got guys that are short, stocky, and I'm not saying that Beterbiev is short, but he's stocky. He's built differently. Like, he has a build that is much more powerful. He doesn't have, I would say, the conditioning to stay on his toes the entire fight. You get what I'm saying,
mm,
right? He's I would highly say that he's more type 1 muscle fiber, and Bevo is more type 2 muscle fiber. Not saying that they both don't have extreme power, but I think the muscle makeup makes a big difference. And those guys back in the day, they kind of knew what they were doing, experimenting with people.
That's a very interesting observation you made about um, the guys from the southern Russia, Central Asia sort of areas have that sort of style as compared to other parts. Because we people are sort of mistaken Beterbiev and people say Beterbiev is more of the puncher, Bivol is more of the boxer, but Beterbiev does have a stronger, arguably stronger amateur pedigree than Bivol. I mean,
Yes.
I know he beat Kovalev twice in the amateurs. I think he had a record which is perhaps better and more fights than Bivol, but he's been looked at almost as the puncher and Bivol as the pure boxer. So it's very interesting observation there. Very interesting. I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of tell people, and that comes from, you know, that comes from like I didn't when I grew up, like I got to study pro boxers in person, but I got to study like the Russian school of boxing from tape. And then when we would go to tournaments or whatever, that's where I would study it. So it's a little bit different. And then like when we had coaches that immigrated over here, they were from Ukraine. There was one guy from Ukraine. There's another guy that came here from, I think it was Lithuania. So like he came to Detroit for a little while, and he would come with us to train and stuff like that. And so like that's where the idea came from, because I remember the one guy was short. The one coach from Ukraine was short and stocky, and he says you can fight two ways. He's like, you can be aggressive and move side to side and then walk your opponent down. He's like, but you're not strong enough to do that. Maybe he says if you go to heavyweight and you put on a lot of weight, he said maybe you can do that. But he says you're not strong enough to do that. He's like, you need to fight, you know, on the balls of your feet. You need to learn how to move. You need to learn how to control everybody with your jab. And when you look at it, you know, that's kind of like what most people think of. They think of the Soviet style is just long guard and then, you know, the pendulum. Yeah, you're a rhythm fighter, and it's not, because if you look at a lot of those fighters that came out of the southern portion, a lot of them are aggressive fighters.
So with Bivol's style, I mean, Beterbiev, he fought on the international stage as amateur. He fought a variety of different styles. So, what aspects of Bivol's style do you believe will give Beterbiev the most problems then?
The ability to control the distance. I think that's um, his ability to control distance is, I think, second to none right now. And I understand, you know, it's a different story when you get hit by when you get hit by Beterbiev, you know, because it's getting hit. You're like getting hit by a heavyweight. So that can change the game plan. But I think his ability to close the distance, and he's on a game plan of I'm gonna hit you with 3 or 4 punches, and then I'm gonna move away. I'm not gonna sit there and engage you, even if I hurt you. I'm gonna step out because I know that I don't have a puncher's chance to knock you out, but you have a puncher's chance to knock me out. And I think that's the advantage for Bivol. For Beterbiev, it's his ability to absorb those punches, and then his ability to like walk a man down. Like he can walk anybody down. So
So,
that's
so what would be your strategy then to neutralize Bivol's movement and that sort of distance control? How would you, if you were in Beterbiev's corner, how would you advise him? This is how we're going to get to Bivol and sort of close that gap.
I would try and keep him on the ropes as much as I possibly can. That would be my recommendation. Keep him on the ropes as much as you can. Uh, Walk him down, and I think that's how you do it. Is figuring out how to walk him down, keep him on the ropes, and then keep your jab in his chest. And worst comes to worst, I mean, if you gotta tie him up, put your weight on him, push him around. Like that's what it is. When you get into a clinch with him, if he clenches you, you make it that he doesn't want to clinch you anymore. And I guarantee you, they're probably working on that in camp. That's just what I would do. Just tire him out. Figure out a way to tire him out, um, and push him around. Use your natural strength against him. Um, you know, don't get me wrong. He's gonna get hit, and he's gonna eat a lot of shots in the time. But for Beterbiev, all it takes is one punch or two. You know, and that's the other thing is that the constant. Uh, he's like a rabid dog, I would say. Like he will just lock onto you. He'll take a couple punches to give one punch. So I think that's the big difference between anybody that Bivol has fought before.
So do you believe then Bivol has the power to keep Beterbiev honest and prevent him from being walked down?
I think he has it. Like anything can happen in the ring. Like it could be you never know. I mean, with the knee injury, that could play a huge role in how he moves in the ring. If or how better BF will be comfortable with walking him down if he notices that he's not able to control the center of the ring. I think the person that wins the fight is the person that's going to control the center of the ring. That's my theory from the beginning, because if Beterbiev is able to control the center and keep uh, Bivol on the ropes, keep him out of the center ring, he has nowhere to move. Whereas if it flips and Bivol's able to keep him on the ropes, I don't think that it will give him more space to move around where he can't walk him down. That's my thing. Whoever is going to control that center of the ring throughout the entire fight, I think is going to control that. Is going to come out the victor, unless one of them lands an unbelievable punch and catches the other one.
So you mentioned about Bivol at Beterbiev. It's going to be moments where he walks down Bivol and Bivol is going to his back to the ropes. How would you, as Bivol, how would you then look to minimize damage when trapped against the ropes? Because clinching Beterbiev may not be a good idea because of
No,
Beterbiev's
it's not.
That's
It's
not be a
not.
good
And
idea.
it's like you got to get on your bicycle. That's my thing is if he's gonna try and back you up to the ropes, you got to figure out a way how to pivot off of him. That's it. Figure out how to pivot off. It's not gonna be pretty. That's my thing. It's not good. It's not gonna be pretty. It's not gonna look beautiful, but you're gonna have to figure out a way to spin your body and angle off of Beterbiev in the ring.
So do you see this fight as a sort of classical boxer versus puncher, or do you think it's a lot more? I mean, I
It's a
don't
lot
think it
more
is.
than
I
that.
don't think it is. Yeah, because of both their.
Because most people think of like, you know, most people that don't know the sport think of Beterbiev as he's the aggressive guy. He's, the body style. That's how you look at him. Everybody, gauges everybody by their body style. You look at Beterbiev, he looks like he's built like a brick shit house. Bivol looks like he's a much more finessed guy. Like he's got a great body on him, but muscular wise, when you look at Beterbiev compared to Bivol, it's like one looks like they could be a boxer, the other one looks like he's just gonna walk through you as a puncher.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. People sort of that lean, supple physique, isn't he? And Beterbiev sort of rip you in two.
Yes, exactly.
So if Bivol does get caught by Beterbiev shots,
And
what
I don't
should
know.
what should his what adjustments he has to make? What do you do? I mean,
See, that's so that and so this is what it brings me. It brings me back to the Joshua and Du Bois fight. Okay, so with somebody like Anthony Joshua and Du Bois, they're heavyweights. Anything can happen. Anybody can get clipped. Okay. The difference is when you look at Anthony Joshua versus Du Bois, I think after that first knockdown, I think it was poor coaching after that, where someone should have told him, whatever you do not engage him. Get on your bike, move around, tap your jab. Do not try and go after him until you're fully recovered. And it might have taken him around to do that. But if you watch the fight, he did not do that. And I get it. Du Bois is a skilled fighter. He's pretty aggressive, but there was no way that AJ should have continued to try and engage him. Now the difference is that can happen to Bivol, and I think Beterbiev is not going to stop. Like he's not gonna let go. He's gonna consistently walk him down. So I think with Bivol, if he gets hurt, he needs to be on his bike. It's just and he needs to get back to the fundamentals of, listen, I know this guy's going to walk me down. What I'm going to have to figure out how to do is, if I clinch with him, how do I limit myself from getting damaged in the clinch, because Beterbiev is going to push him around, and how do I work on just keeping just the right amount of distance away from him so I don't get hit again. Because that's the thing, is he's going to consistently walk him down with that jab, with that powerful jab. Whereas when you look at AJ and Du Bois doesn't have a knockout jab like Beterbiev does. So it's a little bit of a different dynamic. So he's going to have to be much more attentive to moving, as opposed to when you looked at AJ. AJ could have just been on his bike, moved around. They could have. AJ's the bigger fighter. They could have clinched a handful of times or whatever it was in the rounds after that till he got his confidence back, and that comes from bad coaching. With Bivol versus Beterbiev, I don't think that's an option. You need to be on your bike the entire time and angling off of him. Because,
yeah,
like you said, go ahead.
So sorry, carry on.
Because, like you said, you're not going to gain anything when you're clinching with Beterbiev. He's too strong of a guy for that, and he's going to figure out a way to take advantage of you.
Yeah, I heard this fight being compared to Leonard Hearns, the first one. Is that something? I'm not sure I agree with that, but what do you think? I actually think it's probably more Foreman Michael Moore.
Yeah, that's what I would think. Yeah. I would think it's more like that. But Moore wasn't on his feet. Foreman wasn't on his feet. Foreman just had unbelievable power. That's all it was. Like, I mean, when he hit him with that right hand, because I remember. So the funny thing is, I remember when someone interviewed me at Kronk years ago. One of the reporters, they were doing a story on the fight, and I remember they asked me, "So you think Moore's gonna win?" I was like, "I like Moore. I love the fact that he's from Kronk originally, but I think George Foreman's gonna knock him out." I said, because it just takes one punch for him. And I don't know how old I was when I said that, and that's exactly what happened. It was crazy, but that's what happened. Yeah.
But do you think it's going to be an accumulation of punches? Better be similar as mentioned Golovkin. They have that sort of thudding power which sort of breaks you down over the course of a fight as well. So do you think? I hope people say Bivol's going to win the first half, but Beterbiev is going to catch up with him and take it down the stretch and potentially stop the fight. Do you see something like that happening? Because
I
it
can see
breaks
that.
you
I
down?
can see that. I can see that happening, but it all depends on how how defensively skilled people will be in that fight. That's my theory. Is how defensively skilled will he be in that fight? Will he be able to control the distance? Will he be able to miss shots? Because I don't think Beterbiev is the type of guy that will get frustrated if he misses shots. I don't think he'll do that. But then again, we haven't seen that. We haven't seen that happen to him yet. So he hasn't fought somebody that's very elusive. I get it. People will say, he took unnecessary shots against. What's the one guy? Was it
Yard was the
Yard?
yard. Yeah.
Yeah. So he took a lot of unnecessary punishment when he fought Yard or whatever. But he eventually stopped him, didn't he?
Mm.
Yeah.
I
So
think
So I look at it from, if Bivol shows up, he's on his A game, and he's able to control the distance, keep his back off those ropes, and miss a lot of shots, it's going to be a good night for Bivol. If he's not, it's not going to be a good night for Bivol. But then again, anything can happen in that ring.
I saw a statistic that Bivol lands the most jabs, and he also makes people miss the most as well. I think the least connect percentage. But when you look at his defense, a lot of people get enamored, as you all know, by the shoulder roll. But Bivol's has a very different type of defense. How would you describe Bivol's defense, which is clearly effective, but by looking at it, people would just
It's all
see,
footwork. So
yeah,
it's like the old school analogy. Your first line of defense
defense
outside
is
of your
footwork.
brain is your feet. Is how do I just move out an inch and I don't get hit, and it doesn't look flashy. I mean, it's not the shoulder roll, it's not the Philly shell, so it's not super flashy or whatever. It's just he's just out of distance just enough not to get hit. And I think that, like I said, that will play a role, the footwork and how skilled his defense will be on that night.
Yeah, he likes to throw punches in bunches as well. And
Yes.
Beterbiev likes that as well. He likes to punch with he likes people punching at him because it gives him a chance to punch with them and land his shots. Like you said, he may take two to land one. That's what he's looking for. So how do you
Mm-hmm.
see that working out? How is Bivol going to control that, throw those punches, knowing that Beterbiev wants that as well. He wants to trade, but they escape with minimum damage.
So I kind of look at it when Caleb Plant fought Canelo. So one of the things was is he threw a lot of punches. They were just pity pat punches against Canelo in the earlier rounds, and then Canelo adjusted, and that's it. He was able to adjust. I think it's different with Bivol. If he throws the punches in the bunches, he throws enough punches when he's in close and then he gets out. I think that's the thing, because he showed that against Canelo. He threw 3, 4, 5 shots, he landed two, and then he got out before the other fighter could get it, before Canelo could get any shots off. And I know that Beterbiev likes to look at somebody, he'll eat a shot or two, and then he'll try and come after. But I think if Bivol is able to get out before he's gonna land that punch, I think that's gonna be the big difference. Him being just outside of reach, and maybe he counters him. I'm not sure, but I think it's kind of the same plan against what he did against Canelo. I'm gonna land my 3, 4 shots, and I'm gonna get out the way. I'm not gonna try and overcommit.
Yeah, I mean Beterbiev. I mean, obviously we know he's bigger, stronger, longer
Yes,
than Canelo. So it's
yes,
going to be going back to what you said about controlling the distance and the range. It's going to be
yes,
it's going to be a tricky one, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. I mean, you're getting hit by a hammer every time, right?
Yeah, and that's going to eventually slow him down, isn't it? Where
Yeah,
that distance will then start, it will start it'll be inching closer all the time, won't it?
yeah. And then, so the other thing I'd love to see is who's gonna go to the body first. That's 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 what I want to see. Is I want to see who's gonna go to the body first and throwing punches to the body, because I think that will make a massive difference. Uh, Even if you're Beterbiev or if you're Bivol, uh, I think if you're able to go to the body early on, I think you're setting yourself up for a good rest of the fight.
People has to be careful not to get too greedy because
Yes,
Beterbiev will be coming after him like, in between
yes,
those punches. So it's going to be those quick combinations, move as quickly as possible away as well. Can you do
yes,
that for the whole
yes,
fight? Can you do that for the whole fight? Knowing how the nerves and the pressure and the tiredness will sort of creep in as the fight goes on, whilst again here as well. Um, do you think he can?
yeah.
Do you think he'll be able to keep that up for the whole 12 rounds?
I think he has the ability to do it. I'm concerned of, like, my concern is how do you keep the other guy who is a 100% pressure fighter and is skilled at boxing. He's not just, a pressure
Yeah.
fighter. He's going to take some shots, but he's very skilled at boxing as well.
He's seen every
So
style,
how
hasn't he?
was that?
In the amateurs, he must have seen every style. In 300 amateur fights, he's an
Yeah,
international fighter as well, Olympic fighter. He must have
yeah,
every style. He must have, he's fought Usyk a few times as well in the amateurs. So it's nothing he hasn't seen before, isn't it?
yeah. But it's funny because
On both sides,
Usyk
really.
is,
It's not same for people
yeah.
against him.
Both of
Yeah.
them have a very very deep amateur background, but it's interesting to see how much of how they've changed or progressed, I guess you could say, from fighting 3 minutes, short fights, 3 rounds or 5 rounds. I can't remember now if they were still doing 5 rounds back then or 4 rounds, but and how they transitioned to 12 rounds. There's a lot still left over from the amateur, but I think you can see that there's a difference in the way that they fought as amateurs versus the way that they fight as pros. But the mental thing of being exposed to everything as an amateur is what changes your ability to adjust in the ring. In an amateur fight, you can adjust, but in a 12-round fight, you have a little bit more time to adjust.
Interesting. You mentioned the mental side of things as well, because both Bivol and Beterbiev are Russian fighters, and I think Russian fighters, they have that sort of mindset, don't they, where nothing bothers them, nothing flusters them. So even as you're saying, how is Beterbiev going to react when he misses punches? I
Yeah,
think
he
that
won't.
their mindset is going to let him plow through, and the same for Bivol. If he gets hit, I think he'll just brush it off and just continue on with what he's supposed to be doing, what his game plan is. How
Yeah,
do you throw these guys off their game plans? Do you think there's a way to throw them off their game plans? Did anything you think seem to fluster these guys? Because nothing so far has.
I, you know what? I think everybody has a breaking point, maybe, but at this level, these guys don't break. Like, I just think that they're two unique guys um, when it comes to boxing, but also personality-wise, they're completely. They just have a different upbringing and a mindset that you and I can't comprehend. That's all I can say.
Mm,
You know, I don't know what goes through their mind, but I can tell you that they have a completely different mindset than what you and I would have because of just their upbringings.
yeah.
You know, like where Beterbiev's from is not the nicest place in the world. Yeah,
Yes, the history when he was growing up, there was a lot of turmoil there, wasn't there? Obviously with the
yeah,
war there.
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yes, I mean, how do you break these guys mentally as well? Because we do see in boxing where the pressure gets to people, the mental side of it may not be always be matching the physical side, but in this
Mm-hmm.
case, both physically and mentally, these guys are just spot on, aren't they?
Yeah. But
So
then we'll
how do you
find
predict the
out.
winner?
I I don't know.
You have to pick one that you have to pick one that you can't sit on the fence.
So this is the funny thing is I would because I have a relationship with um
The Iceman.
Beterbiev's trainer. So I
Yeah,
got so
I had him
so
on
I have the
twice. Yeah.
relationship with Iceman, but I also have a relationship with his main trainer because his main trainer used to be involved with Canadian boxing, the
Mm.
Canadian amateur circuit, like when I was coming up. And so he knows my dad really well from back in the day. He's much younger than my dad, but he was a younger guy when my dad and I were coming up. And so, it's funny because we have that relationship between. So I have that relationship. To me, either of the fighters, if they win, I think it's a good outcome from boxing. But I always have. I don't know. Maybe it's
Okay,
just
so
in me.
let's say
So I always say that the person that's able to box the best will most likely win the fight.
okay, so let's
And
make
and
it
so I
little bit
feel
easier then.
like I feel like if Bevil's on his A game, I think Bivol wins the fight.
Okay, so
But
if
yeah,
Bivol wins, what's the deciding factor? If Beterbiev wins, what's the deciding factor then?
I think if Bivol wins, it's controlling the distance and keeping the controlling the distance and staying mentally strong with, hey, I'm gonna get hit. I mean, they already know this that they're gonna get hit. What's up, bud? uh, like I know that they're gonna get hit. Um, they have to prepare for that. They have to prepare for getting um, walk down every round. So they're already prepared for that. So now the next question is, how do they do that in the fight? And I think it's a whole different story when you start getting hit by Beterbiev. And I think that's the biggest factor is getting hit by Beterbiev. Because his power is, you know, I
So
would
if
say
Beterbiev wins, what would be the deciding factor for his victory?
his ability to walk Bevo down and keep him on the ropes.
Does the size
That's
of the
that.
ring make a difference? I don't know what the size of the ring is, but the
I don't
smaller it
know,
is,
but I think
the
if it's
better
a
for
bigger
Beterbiev.
ring, I think it's
Mm,
an advantage for Bevo.
yeah.
Um, That's just my thing. It's an advantage. He has more room to move. I don't know if it's going to be a Floyd Mayweather size ring, but
it's interesting. You also mentioned the trainers because Bivol, I believe, is still with the same coaches with his
I'm
amateur.
not sure. So that is the one thing. I'll be honest. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know. That
Because
I
Beterbiev
haven't.
now is with Mark
Yeah,
Ramsey
because
and
he's in a
John
different
Stanley.
country. So he's
Yeah,
he's in Canada and in Quebec. So that's why.
yeah.
Yeah.
But do you think that's been an advantage for Beterbiev as opposed to Bivol staying with the coaches there? Do you think that's an advantage going to this fight?
I mean, then I don't
You
know.
can't
Was it
answer that, I suppose,
advantage?
because you know them both.
Yeah. Well, then because the other thing is so was it an advantage for Floyd Mayweather or Zab Judah or anybody else that stayed with the anybody that stayed with the people that they were around since they were amateurs? I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
I
not
suppose it
sure.
depends on the style of boxing. Because I suppose that well, I don't know if it's how true it is, but we often say the Americans, even the amateurs, have more of a pro style as compared to other countries.
Hmm. But
So
then, so this is the whole dynamics of, oh, it's the pro style. Well, I don't know. What's the pro style now? I mean, we
true,
can't
true.
we
Things,
can't because that was one I remember like when I tried to turn pro and everybody was harping on me that I don't have a pro style, this and that, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, who's the heavyweight champion right now? I was like, I'm like, did we forget that like the wall has come down, communism has come down, and we have, fighters that are fighting like me in this country, or I'm sorry, at that time, I think the Klitschos were still fighting in Europe, but it's like, what happened? You know what I mean? And so like now when you look at it, I think when people think of like a pro style, they think of the traditional, you know, your lead arm is slightly down, your hand is here, this and that, and you're a little bit more paced, you're a little bit more flat-footed.
hmm,
But now when you look at it, I don't think there's one style anymore. I mean,
well,
is
yeah,
one style more effective than another? It depends. That's just like saying, typically a Mexican style, is there's a more aggressive, they're more on their front foot and they're going to move forward. But when you look at Canelo right now, is he more on his front foot? No.
and he's got a bit of
I-
a mix of styles as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, and he would have never had those mix of styles if he didn't fight Floyd
Oh
Mayweather.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. And we're
yeah.
seeing a
So
resurgence now where the Eastern European Russian style is sort of well, I think if you look at the heavier divisions, they're certainly
yes,
dominating, aren't they?
yes, yeah, and it's interesting because even if you look at the smaller guys, like what is it, Inua, like look at his style. That's not a traditional, hands down, flat-footed style. Like don't get me wrong, he's flat-footed sometimes, but he's on his toes or on the balls of his feet you know, a good amount of time, and he's very fast and very reactive. And when you think of like when you look at the styles, they've just changed drastically. And I don't think there's one perfect style. It's what works for you while you're fighting this guy, and then if you're able to adjust, then you're able to adjust.
Mm, that'd be interesting. So you're sitting on the fence then with regards to the winner
So
of Big
I
One.
would so like I said, I was like I would like to say I would like to see Bevo win. I think he can win the fight. That would be my thing is I would love to see him win, but if Beterbiev catches him and Beterbiev walks him down, I there's there's not much that he can do to stop it if he doesn't stick to his game plan or whatever their game plan is to minimize it, you
Mm.
know,
So what's
because people go ahead.
oh, sorry, carry on.
Because people will say, "Oh, well, did you see how he fought against Joe Smith and how he made all those mistakes against Joe Smith? He took a lot of shots that he didn't need to take." And I'm thinking to myself, that fight was 5 years ago. He's not the same person anymore. I mean, he's the same person, but he's
He's
grown
learned
as a
a lot more.
he's learned a lot more, and that you could say the same thing of Beterbiev. Like he took a lot of unnecessary shots from Yard, but he walked him down and he stopped him. So yeah,
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Beterbiev wants that type of yard fight. I think he relishes that that
Yes, and I
firefighting
don't think
training.
he's gonna
He
get
knows he's
that
going
with
to come out
Bivol.
better.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't think he's gonna get that with Bivol. So it's gonna be interesting to see how coaching plays a factor and how the mental game plays a factor. Who's gonna break first, if anybody breaks, to move forward. Yeah.
So what do you think Beterbiev does if he wins? He's almost 40 years old. Does he retire? Does he sample the cruiserweight?
He says peace. I mean, there's nothing else. And we had this conversation after Usyk beat um, Tyson Fury. Like, there's nothing left for him to do. He doesn't have anything to prove anymore. I mean, the guy won a gold medal. He dominated the cruiserweight division. He moved up the heavyweight division. He won everything at the heavyweight division. I mean, and like I said, it's a different mentality. Even though people will say it's a Western mentality, the influence of culture on the Russian countries and the Eastern Bloc countries is just, I, I don't know how to explain it. Like, there's just things that, you know, why don't they
Yeah.
smile? Like, people always say that to me. Why don't you smile? I'm like, I don't know. And there's a meme going around, and like, when you talk about people that are from Eastern Europe, yeah, it's very difficult for us to smile. Whatever, we only smile with people we're comfortable with. Like, it's a thing. Whatever, like, we don't smile for everybody because it's different. Like when you're a little, the like the fairy tale or the tale of the story or the folk story is when you're a kid you need to smile because you want people's attention. But as a grown adult, you don't want people's attention and you only smile for the people that matter to you most. And it's like that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I
No,
guess it's like it's a Slavic trait, whatever. So yeah,
that's very
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
I'm actually going to move on to another question here.
Okay.
So on Instagram, Guide Girl Boxing, the profile of boxing, one of the questions he asked. So you yourself, you're an amateur, you're a champion. Uh, in my opinion, like I said before, had you decided to go pro, I believe you would have been a world champion. So one of the questions he asked was, whose career would you prefer? Bernard Hopkins, longevity, as well as being a great boxer, or Roy Jones Jr. If you had a great amateur career,
Bernard Hopkins.
you would choose Bernard Hopkins over Roy Jones Jr.
No,
And what would
no.
be and what's your reasoning for what's the reasons you'd
So
choose
I
Bernard?
mean, I would have called it. I would have called it. You know, I would have let go, whatever. But um, Roy Jones in the '90s was an unstoppable, unbelievable force. Yeah, that's it. There was nobody as genetically gifted and talented as Roy Jones in the sport of boxing. And what happens is he relied heavily on that. And don't get me wrong, he was an extremely skilled fighter. But what happened is when some of that speed left and some of that reaction time left, you could see that he was no longer the same fighter. And I think it was, I can't remember who caught him first, if it was the guy from Jamaica or if it was Antonio Tarver. I can't remember who caught him first, but when he got knocked out, when he had a scary knockout, it was the guy from Jamaica. I can't think of the guy's name, but
Was
when
it
he hit,
Glenn Johnson? Not sure.
it was yeah, I think it was Johnson. Yeah, it was Johnson. So I always mix up the timelines of
Mm.
if he got knocked out first by Glenn Johnson, then by Antonio Tarver, or if Antonio Tarver knocked him out first and then Glenn Johnson.
I think
But
Tarver did. I think Tarver knocked him out first. Yeah,
yeah. And
after the
so
Ruiz fight.
and so that put a chink in his armor. And then when he took that shot from Glenn Johnson, that probably would have been a calling sign to say, hey, you know what? Maybe I'll do one more Tarver fight and then call it a day. Because when he got hit, he froze up. I thought he seized out. I thought he seizured in the fight. Like, you know, um, Bernard Hopkins, I get it. He was dirty. Everybody, you laugh because that's like one of the things.
He
It's a
was good at doing it, wasn't he? He was very
he
crafty.
was good at what he was doing, but I think with him, his it's the same routine. he talks about it. He's like, I'm done. I'm in bed by 10:30, 11 o'clock every single day. I have my routine. This is what I do every single day, and it's worked for me. I mean, the guy was 40 years old fighting world champions.
Oh,
I mean, it caught up to him, when he fought Calzaga, when he fought Joe Smith. Yeah, Joe Smith. Like, I don't
his
know
last
why he
fight.
fought Joe Smith. Yeah. Um, you know, I think more for him at that point in time, it was more of how far can I push myself? And I think he might have pushed himself a little too far.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned the coach Mustafa. There's no right or wrong answer.
No,
Some
no.
people, because Jones did dominate for over a decade, probably, didn't
I
he?
mean, he was like there was no question that there was no one that was going to touch Roy Jones Jr. That like
Mm.
he was untouchable. Could you say that about Bernard Hopkins? Nah, not so much. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't. It wasn't lopsided when Roy Jones fought somebody. It was a lopsided fight. Most of the time with Bernard Hopkins, as skilled as he was and as crafty as he was, and controversially, uh, I would say methodical in the ring. So, as controversial methodical as he was in the ring, you know, he wasn't the dominating force like that Roy Jones was. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really make a difference because it's who walks out of there with a W.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting as well because when you mentioned about Roy Jones Jr. when he took took the tough knockout, um, people when opponents when they see that other boxers, they all of a sudden it gives them hope when they fight him. So then they think I've got a chance now. It makes them fight almost harder. So he got probably a little bit harder than he would have because of that. So some ways in people say, I'm not comparing Anthony Joshua to Roy Jones Jr. here, but when Anthony Joshua lost to Ruiz, everyone all of a sudden wanted to fight him or knew how to fight him, put pressure on him, and then
Mm-hmm.
he's going to struggle. Which goes on to the next question. I know we want to discuss Daniel Dubois versus Anthony Joshua. Joshua's team must have known that Dubois was going to come out throwing punches at him, put him under pressure, because that was people saying the best way he's got to win. So you would have thought they had prepared for that. But it gives the other boxer hope as well. They know he's vulnerable now.
Yes,
So what did you make of the Joshua Dubois fight?
I think it's poor coaching.
It's, it's,
That's
it's strange, isn't it? Because
so
before
I
the
don't
fight,
know. So I don't know if it's poor coaching or if it's because that's the other thing is you could blame it on the coach, but at the end of the day, and we've had this, we've set this in stone before is the coach can only do so much. It's your responsibility to follow through when you're in the ring. Um, and if maybe they worked on stuff um, in the ring prior to the fight, maybe they did all this stuff. But what happened is I think that's a coaching fault because they should have flat out told him, you need to get on your bike, do not engage, move, run for at least 1 or 2 rounds. It's a 12-round fight. You can give up 2 rounds to run. And maybe he'll get lucky, he'll expose himself because he'll get frustrated. And we know he can get frustrated because it happened kind of against Usyk. I mean, he got dropped with a jab. Anything can happen. So I think of it as someone dropped the ball. Maybe it was the coaching staff, but Anthony, as a experienced fighter, he should have said, put in his head that I need to get on my bike. Like, I mean, that's that's what you do when you get hit like that. Let's figure out how to move around, and you know, I don't know. And I think there was a clip before the round that he got knocked out where he's like, "Oh, he's nothing." I think there's a
mm,
clip that shows him
yeah,
in
yeah,
between the rounds where
yeah.
he's talking, and I'm like, "Buddy, he just knocked you down twice already or 3 times. He's caught you clear. This is not a good mentality to have." So, you know, that's just another example of the ego got you.
Yeah, I mean, credit to Dubois' team because going into the
Oh
fight,
yeah.
AJ was the bigger name, the more esteemed fighter. His coaching team as well was more. a lot of praises for them. They've done so well. He had the film specialist, Lee Wiley, as well. I'm a big fan of his work before he had to take it down because he joined the pro ranks. So they had everything in their corner almost, or set up to succeed, everything in their favour. But the other team, Don Charles and co, they tell you flip the script. It just shows it's not always the bigger flashy ones, is it? It's the ones that very interesting. But everywhere boxing, one big punch
And that's it. And like you said, like he caught him with that uppercut, and so that's the other thing is this is why I blame it on the coaching staff, is because what happens with Anthony Joshua typically in a fight is if he catches somebody with a shot, and you can go back and look at all of his fights, because I've noticed this. I'm like, even when he fought Klitschko, one of the things that he does is he will put his chin over his chest, closer to his knee. He gets excitable. He gets like a kid in a candy store, I guess you could say. And everybody does that when they catch somebody. But if you look at skilled fighters, they will not come out with their head over like this. And that's what he does is instead of keeping his chin down, you can still keep your chin down and attack the fighter. His chin comes up. And I don't know if that's because of the way that he's built and how big he is, but his chin comes up and it's hanging out there like a prostitute on the road, and boom, he gets caught. You know what I mean? And that's what happens. And when you look at it, like when he caught Ruiz, he got excitable, came out there, and you can clearly see. I'm like, why is his chin up? Boom, he got caught. And then when you watch that Du Bois fight, I'm like, this is just like a repeat. Like he caught him with the uppercut, and then he picks his head up, and then boom, he gets caught. So I think that 100% is a coaching error. Like there is no reason that a guy that's that is a heavyweight champion of the world and is an Olympic gold medalist should have his chin hanging out in the air like a prostitute on the road.
But do you think it's too late to change something like that? Because if you've done it years
there's no
still
way.
think
Listen,
when it comes down to the crunch, you think because he's been doing it for years and no one's corrected it.
Listen to Lennox Lewis when he talks about. There is a clip of Lennox Lewis that talks about when he started working with Emmanuel Steward, and I think that was after the Oliver McCall fight. I can't remember. Yeah, it was after the McCall fight. He says, he repeats it, that he said, why do you keep your hand up here the whole time? And then he's like, why don't you just bring it down here and then you could defend? You could do this. If Lennox Lewis, who was already a world champion at that time, let me see, about the same. So let's see, he won gold in '88, right?
Yeah, he must have.
Yeah, he won it in '88. Yeah. So then 8 years after. Yeah, so it's about the same. About 8 years, 9 years after he started working with Emmanuel Steward. So like 96, 97, he started working with Emmanuel Steward. If my time is right. So 9 years after he turned pro, 8 to 9 years after he turned pro, he was able to make an adjustment and then to become more effective with his jab. That's something that Emmanuel Steward, like I said earlier, he was able to find the 1 to 2, 3 things that'll make you a much better fighter. And with Lennox Lewis, he was able to change where his hand was, bring it down a little bit so I. Wait 1 second. Okay, so where I can defend and then be more aggressive with my jab. It could be done under the right coaching. That's why I say it's a coaching error, because there's no reason that he should still have his head out there.
Yeah, I mean, why?
Because when he comes in like this with his arm down. It's not here. It's like here. And I'm like, you're not gonna. I'm sorry, you're not fast enough.
Giving it away is coming.
Yeah. Yep.
But my question would be that this has been going for a number of years. He's had a number of coaches. Has it been corrected? Is it something which can be, because it only happens when he's hurt someone and instinct takes over, he goes in for the kill. Can he replicate that enough? Because in sparring, maybe the mentality is going to be different as opposed to a real fight, and that instinct takes over, and the chin comes back up. Can he replicate that enough to correct it? Because he won't go through the same emotions
Of
in
course you
sparring.
can. Of course, I
Because it hasn't worked.
100%.
Unless
Yeah,
no
yeah.
coach has picked it up, it hasn't worked.
So
Whatever's been
so
tried.
then the other thing is like I think about it is why are you changing your coaches so much? Is
Yeah,
the problem the
that's a fair comment.
coaches? You know, like what was it? I don't remember. Maybe it was. I think it was Eddie Futch that said it. It was one of the old school trainers. He's like, the problem with boxers today is they want to blame everything on the coaches, but they don't want to take any of the blame themselves. And I think, yes, it was him because he was talking about Riddick Bowe and the whole story with, you know, there's only so much I can do at my age, especially with a guy with a refrigerator in his bedroom. Yeah, I mean, so and John Scully talks about that as well. Like, I think I don't know, maybe you mentioned that on your podcast, or maybe in conversation with him. He's made that. He's like, why you don't need to change your entire coaching staff if you had one bad fight. You you need to go look at yourself introspectively because that coaching staff got you to where you are right now. And I could understand if you have a toxic camp and stuff like that. That's a different story. I don't know how many toxic camps Anthony Joshua has been in, or toxic situations. I don't know. I have no idea. But if there's been multiple coach changes, then maybe it's not the coaches.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Does he know? Does he know what he wants? Does he know? Does he know what he's looking for? Uh, yeah,
yeah,
it's just, yeah. And it's interesting as well because Eddie Fudge, some people would say he's the best coach of all time, but like you mentioned, Arguello blamed him for a loss. Joe Fraser blamed him as well, part of
yeah,
his career. And you mentioned now as well with Riddick Bowe. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's a thankless job being a coach, isn't it?
Yes, it is. You know what I mean? Um, and and so like I also think about like think about Canelo and his success. He's been with that
Yeah,
guy for
since the whole
forever.
career. Yeah, it's his dad or him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And think about Floyd Mayweather. Think about Lomachenko. Like Lomachenko lost some questionable fights. He lost some fights. He didn't blame it on his coaching staff. Usyk, he, I get it. He's been successful. He's still kind of with the same coaching staff. Um, so I just look at it from that perspective. Like, if you need to change, maybe it's once, maybe twice. You know what I mean? In a lot of things, maybe it's a monetary reason you needed to change. I'm not sure. So
Yeah, interesting. I was just thinking of if you go through some of the most of the top 10 boxers of all time, I think they're pretty sure they all stuck to the same coach as well. There's something to be said for that continuity and building that sort of
yeah, what
rapport.
is it?
So,
Hagler stayed with the same guy from day one, right?
yeah, yeah. Ali was the
And
same as well. Sugar
and
Robinson was the same as well. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I mean, and like that's the other thing is, because I had a conversation with somebody that their father was involved in boxing here in Detroit, and we had this conversation. And she brought up her dad. Her dad's no longer with us, and she's like, I kind of remember you. I think I remember you. My dad coached you, whatever. And like I tell people all the time, there's a lot of people that helped me and gave me advice, and that's just like and I will give credit where credit is due. My dad was the guy that was there every single day with me. He helped me develop into what I was as a fighter. But there's so many other coaches that I I picked pieces from, you
Mm.
know, and her dad was one of them. His name was David Gray. And so like what David did is like he stood in the ring for some of my local fights or whatever, or when we went sparring to his gym or another gym that he would be at, he would always try and give me like advice and stuff like that. And one of the things that I learned from him is how to keep your cool. And I don't know how to explain it to people. I just, how to be cool, calm, and collective. That is like one of the things that he showed me because of the way that he talked in the ring or the way that he explained things, and that's like something that stuck with me. And just like I could say with other guys that I picked things up from. So it goes back to like even though Eddie Futch is the guy, there were other guys that were with Eddie Futch in the gym that fighters were picking things up from. There is no one person that made that one fighter. You get what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
it's a team of people. Like I think I sent you that picture with where Luther Burgess was in there, Eddie Futch, and like, can you imagine what that corner was like? So
yeah, and fighters are picking up things from each other as well.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing is like,
yeah,
because if you're in the ring with somebody and somebody starts catching you with something, it's like, or they defend you, they're able to whatever, and I don't know, like I don't remember if I ever asked anybody, hey, how'd you do that? Like I don't remember that, but if I see something that I thought would work, I would definitely try and replicate it. Like if I seen it work enough times, I would definitely try to replicate it. And other fighters, I'm not the only one that's gonna say that did that. Everybody does that. Like that's it.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Excellent stuff as always, Arthur.
Yeah.
Always great to pick your brains and get your insights on boxing.
Yeah.
I know we've got Fury Usyk coming up, so I'll be calling you back for that.
I don't think. Oh God, what did Usyk call him? Oh man,
yeah,
my fat
yeah,
belly, something or whatever. Just like
yeah.
what?
Greedy belly, something like that.
Yeah, greedy belly guy. Yeah, the greedy belly guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think after that fight, he just rides off into the sunset. I don't think he has anything else to prove. I mean, like he talks about it, like the family thing, whatever. Like I can literally see that guy. Okay, I win. Here, have the belts. Have a good day. I'm done. You know what I mean? I forfeit my belts and I'm good. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So maybe won't be as much talk about in the lead up, but after the fight we'll have to catch up then, because
Yeah.
we know what's going to be happening in the lead up, don't we?
Yeah.
But yeah. As always, pleasure. Appreciate your time.
Yeah. I really appreciate the time. Thank you very much. Have a great